children, my name is Anna, and today I'm in this warehouse looking for pieces of fabric to make a patchwork quilt. You know what a patchwork quilt is? Well, it's a bed cover that's made of many pieces of colorful fabric. You know what comes to my mind? The word remnant. The word remnant means part that is left over, that remains or subsists. The remnant is like those pieces of cloth that are left over from whole bolts. And God's triumphant church is like the patchwork quilt that has been stitched together with the thread of His righteousness. Yes, God is like a tailor who takes all the remnants from all the ages and sews them together to form His church. The quilt begins as just a pile of worthless scraps, but the tailor knows what he's going to do with each piece and how he'll arrange them into the final design. So he organizes the pieces by color and texture and sews them together, little by little. In the same way, we are those useless scraps and cannot see the final design of our character or of the church. Therefore, we shouldn't think that we are better than others because we have a particular color or talent, because each piece of cloth is unique and special in the eyes of God. Only He knows why He has set us in the place where we are and the purpose He has for each one of us. Today, the Apostle John will speak to us about the Remnant Church. Let's listen carefully.
Hi, children. It's good to see you again. Yes, I'm still on the island of Patmos. Come closer. I want to tell you something. Recently, I had a vision. I saw a pregnant woman standing on the moon with a crown of 12 stars in her head and dressed with the sun. She looked very bright. I don't believe that the woman represents Mary, the mother of Jesus, because in the vision I heard the same 1260-year time period mentioned from the book of Daniel that reaches to the time of the end. The woman appears to be the church of God. And in the vision, I saw the dragon, who clearly represents the devil, made a war against the church. Did you know that in every century there has always been a faithful remnant, those people who remain true to God and fought to keep His commandments? Do you remember how many Israelite men entered Canaan? Of the 600,000 men over the age of 20 who left Egypt, only 2 men with their families entered the promised land. That is an extremely small number, but they were the only ones who had remained faithful. In Elijah's time, he, with 7,000 Israelites, refused to join King Ahab's apostasy. Can you imagine? Now 7,000 may seem like a lot, but it's a small number compared to the vast majority who rebelled against God and worshipped other gods. Again, in Ezra's time, only a remnant decided to return to Judah to rebuild Jerusalem. And I could mention many other examples. In fact, the Jewish nation itself gives a clear example of what a remnant is. Out of the 12 tribes chosen by God to be the people of Israel, only 2 tribes remained. The 10 unfaithful tribes were rejected and ceased to be His people because of their unbelief and disobedience. And even though the majority had left Him, God considered these 2 to be the chosen people of Israel. Sadly, many years later, Even those remaining 2 tribes also stopped being God's chosen people when they rejected Jesus as their Messiah. Why did this happen? You see, when God gave Abraham the promise that his descendants would be as many as the sand of the sea and the stars of the sky, he also gave conditions or requirements that they would have to keep in order to remain a part of his special people and receive the promised blessings. Yes, God's blessings always have conditions. The people had to listen to him, believe in him, and obey his commandments. But sadly, the people didn't fulfill these conditions. So instead of receiving blessings, they received curses and lost the privilege of being his chosen people. Now, you may be wondering, if all the tribes of Israel lost the blessing of being God's people, who are his people? I'd be happy to tell you. It is those who obey all the 10 Commandments and are always patient in trials and have the faith of Jesus Christ. It is the ones who obey him and live like him. But in the last days, obedience to the Sabbath will be the point that divides the disobedient from the true children of God, the remnant. And it is against this remnant that the devil is angry. But God will give them the victory. I invite you to be part of this Remnant Church, God's true church. Goodbye.
You know, kids, the prophet Isaiah tells us it doesn't matter if the people of Israel are as many as the sand of the sea, because only a faithful remnant will be saved. Throughout history, the faithful have always been a small group. They have suffered persecution, mockery, and mistreatment, but God has never abandoned them. For them there is a promise. God will give them a new name, a crown of stars, and beautiful mansions in which to live. They will also be able to eat from the tree of life, and best of all, praise God through all eternity. Well, in this week's activity, you will research a reformer from the Bible. You may choose Elijah, John the Baptist, or Stephen. Present what you have learned to your class by discussing their life, what made them different, and the things we can learn from them so we can be reformers in our time. See you next Sabbath.